Let me get that started. All right, now it's official. We are being recorded, everyone. So welcome to our webinar today. My name is Laura Podolsky. I am the Assistant Director for the UC Institute of Transportation Studies, and I will be your host and guide today for our informational webinar on the RFP that we've just released. This is our 8th year releasing this RFP. However, it is our first informational webinar. So all of you are a part of one of our very firsts. We'll probably keep doing this each year so you can tell all of your friends and colleagues you were here first. So let me share my screen and slides in just a moment. All right, so here we go. And these slides, for all this joining us, we are recording the webinar. This webinar and the slides will all be available on our website. So if you'd like to take notes, you are free to do so, though we will have everything posted. So again, this is our first informational webinar we've had with our RFP for our statewide transportation research program. We just released the RFP April 15th. So today we want to go over some of the nuts and bolts of our RFP, ask any questions. And then I also wanted to share just a little bit more about the UC Institute of Transportation Studies in case there's anyone that haven't participated in our program before or who are engaged with the ITS at their campus. All right, so very briefly, a little bit about the UC Institute of Transportation Studies. So we are a community of scholars, staffs, and students dedicated to advancing the state-of-the-art in transportation engineering, planning, and policy for the people of California and beyond. There are 4 ITS branches located in the UC system, and those are located at UC Berkeley, UC Davis, UC Irvine, and UCLA, or otherwise known as ITS Berkeley, ITS Davis, ITS Irvine, and UCLA ITS. So all together, the 4 campuses represent about 225 affiliated faculty and researchers, and those affiliated faculty and researchers represent about 30 different disciplines the last time we counted. So we really like to pride ourselves that we are conducting multidisciplinary transportation research. Also, collectively across the 4 campuses, we host about 250 students that are pursuing a master's or doctoral degree each year. Now, for some of the people behind UC ITS, there's a UC ITS Council of Directors that oversees the governing decision-making of UC ITS, and that is the ITS director at each campus. So that is the 4 on your left. So that's Daniel Rodriguez. He's the director of ITS Berkeley. Dan Sperling, director of ITS Davis. Steve Ritchie, director of ITS Irvine, and Brian Taylor, director at UCLA ITS. Susan Shaheen also has an elevated leadership role in our program. She is a professor of civil and environmental engineering and science at UC Berkeley, and she is our director of the UC ITS Resilient and Innovative Mobility Initiative, or RIMI, that some of you may have heard of. And then, of course, there is me as the assistant director of the UC ITS. Also, we have an administrative lead. I need a better name for this because administrative doesn't quite capture all the fantastic things that these individuals do across the 4 campuses. So these are your point people at your campus that are really responsible for the on-campus or on-the-ground implementation of our statewide transportation research program. Some of them are on, well, I think all of them are on our webinar today, so they'll be here helping to answer questions too. So these are your go-to resources at your campus. If you have questions about PI eligibility or if you want to know something that is very specific to your campus or to the ITS. Their contact information is all on our website in case you don't have it. You also can message them and ask for it in this webinar too, if you like. We also have a lot of individuals, many who are on our call today too, who are working across the ITS. So all these individuals, a portion of their time is dedicated to working across the campus, but they also have roles at their individual campus. So we have Donia Lugo. She is our ITS Equity Research Manager. There she is waving. She is based at UCLA ITS. We have Molly D'Agostino. She is our UC ITS Policy Lead for Connected and Automated Vehicles, that's CAV and Shared Mobility. She is based at ITS Davis. And while not working across UC ITS, she is a director of a newly established research program and engagement program at ITS Davis focused on automated vehicles. Vicki de Guzman, she is also based at, well, not also, but she is based at ITS Irvine, and she is working across the 4 campuses as our policy lead for freight and goods movement, also leading outreach and engagement for ITS Irvine. We also have Kendra Levine, based at ITS Berkeley. She is the ITS Library Director. If you don't know her, she is an amazing resource for all scholars across the 4 branches. And then our communication lineup is at the bottom there. We have Jenny Frappier, who is our communication senior specialist based at ITS Irvine. Very excited to just add Alejandra Soto to our team. She is our webinar and event specialist based at ITS Davis. And then our copy editor extraordinaire, Mark Garrett. He is affiliated with UCLA ITS and actually based in Ohio. So that is our team. You'll see a lot of their names and emails as you engage with us in this program. All right, now we're going to talk more specifically about the RFP. So in 2017, we were really fortunate to the UC ITS to be included in the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, or Senate Bill 1, or the gas tax increase. It goes by many names. The UC ITS was included in this bill and receives $5 million annually from the state of California. And that money is to support research, education, and outreach activities that inform transportation policy, planning, and engineering issues in California. So with this RFP, we will be awarding approximately $2.7 million total. However, that amount does vary by campus. So depending on what campus you are, that amount will, you can find them there on this chart. And that is roughly, give or take, is the amount that will be awarded at each campus. All right, so we're going to review some key dates and activities. This was taken directly from the RFP, so you can reference that. As I mentioned earlier, RFP was released on April 15th. Today's our informational webinar. We also have something new this year, which I'm really excited about, our drop-in equity workshops and consultations being led by Donia Lugo. She had her first one, hosted her first one on Friday. She has 2 more this week. She'll be sharing a little bit more about these and what you can expect by attending in a couple more slides in the presentation. And she'll mention this as well, but I'll just mention it too, that these are all drop-in. You don't need to register, and there's a Zoom link for those. I will drop that in the chat box, or maybe Donia, if you have it handy, you can drop it in there. And it's also on the RFP webpage. As a requirement of our program, you do need to have identified a project stakeholder, an external stakeholder. So that could be a public agency, a community-based partner organization. If you would like to request assistance in finding a stakeholder partner for your proposal or for your project, you can do so through an online form on our RFP webpage. But you need to do that by Monday, May 6th. And that just gives us time to reach out, talk to you, learn more about your project, and then help you find a good partner that you can connect with. So that is a week from today. And then one of the most important deadlines or dates on this table is May 31st. That is when proposals are due. And we expect to let everyone know if you received award or if you did not, you will be contacted by August 5th. And then projects start dates are the first day of the fall 2024 quarter or semester, depending on what campus you are at. I wanted to highlight up front a lot of helpful links and resources for you. We have an RFP website or webpage on our main UC ITS website. So on there, you can do all of these things in the bullet list. You could download the RFP, get the proposal template, submit your proposal, You can submit a question about the RFP, request help for that stakeholder partner, request an equity consultation, which Adonia will mention in a little bit as well. And there's that's why we'll keep an active and updated FAQ page. So any question that's asked on today's webinar or through that online form, that will also be posted to that webpage. And then you can also find those dates and Zoom links for the equity drop-in workshops. I also want to highlight our current grantees webpage. That has a lot of good resources too that I'll highlight that will probably be of most relevant to all of you is the grant requirements and expectations. I encourage all of you to read that before or during as you write your proposal. It'll help you write probably a stronger proposal. And then this other resource here is to learn more about open access journal articles. So these open access journal articles can serve as your final report deliverable, and there's more information about that on our website as well. All right. I do see some questions coming into chat. It's a little hard for me to present and to monitor the chat. So if it's okay, I'm going to get through our presentation and then I can go into chat, ask questions. I'll also lean on any of my campus colleagues, Craig, Laura, Lauren, if you're on here and you see anything in the chat that you think is worthwhile to highlight, you can just chime in. They're used to stepping in and interrupting me, so I'm happy if they would like to do that. All right. The other thing I want to emphasize is if you need help, just ask. This is what we consider an internal RFP. We're here to really want you to be successful. We want to get really good proposals, so please reach out. We are here. There's a whole team of us that can help you, as mentioned, with an equity consultation, help connect you with the partner. We can answer questions like, are you eligible? Is my project eligible? We have a couple requirements that are unique in RFPs, such as our statement of support, letter of commitment. So if you have some questions about those, you want to make sure you're doing it right, have the right approach, just please reach out, ask us, submit a question on that form, and we are happy to help you. For those that have applied in the past, again, we're on our 8th round, so hopefully a lot of you have applied in the past. I wanted to just call out a couple things that are different than in past years. And if those are applying for the first time, then maybe the slide isn't as relevant to you. So as I mentioned already several times, we've added a couple new equity elements. So we have some those drop-in workshops. We have the one-on-one consultations. And then Adonia Lugo helped develop this equity worksheet. It is optional. It's linked in our RFP and our worksheet or our proposal template. And it's really to help PIs think about how to integrate equity in a more meaningful way in their proposal, how to connect with community. I think it's a great resource, even for those that don't think that they have an equity element in your proposal. I'd highly encourage you to take a look. This year, we did not include funding for the non-ITS UC campuses. I didn't want to emphasize that in case you were thinking of working with a colleague at another UC campus. And the reason for that is that we usually include $250,000 a year for scholars outside of the 4 campuses. But last year we had several 2-year awards that went to non-ITS campuses. So we already spent our allocation this year. You'll also see a big difference in the list of our research priorities. We have a much shorter list. It's a curated shorter list, but still hopefully broad, where we'll capture a lot of the good ideas of scholars across ITS. We removed additional points from the evaluation for if you had a multi-campus proposal and for equity and jobs considerations. We also removed Seed Grant as an eligible project type. We've had that, I think, in the past 7 RFPs. So this was the first year that we removed that. And this was also a new change for us. We've replaced the policy brief requirement for most of the projects with a broader translational product requirement. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit later too. All right, here is just a long list of all the priorities in our RFP. I'm not going to go one by one and talk about these. Rather, I just included them here in case there are questions about some of these priorities. We can always go back to this slide to reference them. The numbering here is a little different than in our RFP, so apologies for that, for any confusion, but these are our 12 broad curated, but still curated list of priorities this year. All right, and here's where I'd love to turn it over to Adonia Lugo, and she's gonna highlight a couple of the new equity resources that we have in our RFP. So Adonia?
Excellent. Thanks, Laura. So yeah, as Laura was saying, we really worked together closely and with the associate directors and the directors this year to ensure that there is room for people who are building in an equity focus across the different topic areas. And additionally, if you are working on a research area that's not covered within the priorities, you're welcome to submit a proposal if you're doing it in partnership with a community-based organization. So we're really just looking across the board for how to support more researchers being able to include community consultation in their work. So to that end, I am more than happy to meet one-on-one or with research teams during the RFP open period. So you can request an equity consultation through the form that's included in the RFP. I'll also put my email address in the chat box so people have that. Happy to chat about, I'm working on a project that is using modeling. How would I incorporate community engagement or equity into that? There's a lot of good thinking going on about how we can just build in small steps or visiting with established community advisory groups around equity at different state agencies or local agencies. And I'm happy to do that brainstorming with folks. So in addition to being available for one-on-one consultation, you're also welcome to join us at one of our 2 upcoming equity consultation workshop times. So I did put the link to that in the chat box, the Zoom link. We're going to have that on Thursday at 11 a.m. and on Friday at 1 p.m. And that information is all included in the RFP as well. And thanks to a few of the people who are in the meeting space today, we went through our first iteration of this last Friday. And I'm supported by a graduate student researcher, William Walker, in those spaces, along with Kendra Levine, who Laura mentioned earlier is the UC ITS librarian, and JC Garcia Sanchez, who works at ITS Davis. So we're all in those workshop spaces to provide kind of regional knowledge of organizations to partner with or advice on getting started. We can make connections. And that's what those spaces are for. And in those spaces, I also talk in more detail about the equity components in the RFP and in the proposal template, and walk through this equity worksheet tool, which again is an optional tool for people to use in composing both the equity section of the proposal and incorporating equity into the other pieces. So yeah, and the last thing to note here is that in order to make it budget-wise work better for proposers to include a community-based organization or NGO partner in your proposal, you can request a budget that exceeds the award limit for the type of project you're applying for, up to 25%, if that's going to support, being able to bring on a community partner, because we understand that that changes budget a little bit. So I'll leave it there. I'm going to put my email in the chat box and look forward to talking through any of these details with folks who are interested.
Thank you, Adonia. And here is that slide I preemptively changed to before you were done, so apologies. But here is a great team that Adonia has put together to help across the ITS. So again, putting faces and names, you might know some of these individuals, and looks like you'll meet them if you attend one of the drop-in workshops. So very excited, definitely recommend it. All right, so here are some of the project types we are accepting in this part of this RFP. So we have our applied research projects. So those are for closing a knowledge gap on an important issue involving original data acquisition and or analysis. The award range there is $100 per participating branch. And so we say participating branch since we do encourage multi-campus collaboration. So just to explain that a little bit. And then there's also research synthesis. So those are summarizing existing research for a given topic and pointing out the critical relevance to policy practice, et cetera. And then also a translational project. So that would be something smaller in scope that's helping to make your previous research more accessible to that policymaker or practitioner audience, or just more accessible in just different contexts or audience applications, et cetera. All right. One of the big questions, who is eligible to apply? Well, you must be a researcher from UC Berkeley, UC Davis, UC Irvine, or UCLA. UC Irvine has a little asterisk. My colleague Craig Rint is on the call today, so he can, or the webinar, so he can answer any questions about eligibility at Irvine. So you must be a full-time ITS Irvine faculty associate. So please reach out to Craig if you're not sure if you meet this requirement. You must be eligible to serve as a PI at your campus. And you can't have any outstanding or past due deliverables for previously awarded UC ITS projects. And I believe this would also be for other ITS programs that the ITSs run. So that would be the National Center for Sustainable Transportation. And I believe that just relates to UC Davis. And then the UTC Pacific PSR. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but that does include all of the 4 campuses. So you'll just want to make sure you are eligible and you do not have any outstanding deliverables. So one of the questions we get a lot on is just the budget, what's in, what's out. So we wanted to include a tips for preparing successful budgets. So here's a quick of yes, do these list. So in the RFP, you'll see that there's a template you should use depending on what campus you're from. You only want to include direct costs, so no overhead. Your F&A rate is 0. You want to include a GSR funding on applied research projects only. So that's a requirement just for the applied research. Non-resident tuition is allowed. Funding for CBOs and NGOs, as Adonia mentioned, is allowed. You want to work with your budget analyst in preparing that budget. If you don't know who that is or need additional help, please reach out to your campus administrative lead, who I highlighted earlier. Include a detailed budget justification. As we read that as evaluators, really want to understand what's in your budget. Be cost effective, and last but not least, but probably most important, if you have a question, just ask. And then some things on the no list. We don't cover international travel, so don't include that in your budget. We do promote you to travel internally in California or domestically within California, especially if it's to go present at a conference or an event to policymakers, practitioner. But unfortunately, we do not cover travel outside of California, and that includes TRB, the Transportation Research Board Conference. I already mentioned that you do not have to include the overhead, or don't include that. Please limit your funding for computers, equipment, and then only UC researchers from those 4 campuses are eligible for this, in addition to the CBOs, NGOs, but unfortunately, no other individuals or organizations can receive funding through this RFP. And then just another friend or the more stick way of putting this is, don't wait to work with your budget analyst. Please reach out to them early. All right, I forgot to mention in our introduction that the 4 ITS branches under the banner of UC ITS are a multi-campus research unit. And so that's a designation from the UC Office of the President. So we do encourage multi-campus collaborations and proposals. So I just wanted to highlight a couple things that will help you submit a successful multi-campus proposal. So you want to assemble and describe your project team. So identify that PI and co-PI from each campus. And then in the proposal, you will be describing how you'll be collaborating as a team across the campuses involved. The other thing that's very specific to multi-campus is how you prepare and submit your budget. So we'll want one full budget summary in the project budget summary table in the RFP. And then we want each campus to submit also a separate budget for their campus. And we can get into some questions if anyone has questions about that, we can answer those. I also wanted to spend a little time just talking about our, oops, sorry, there's the additional things that I've mentioned is, yeah, enter the project budget, the summary, and the separate budgets. And then I did just want to emphasize some of our minimum required deliverables. We encourage you to do more than these, but these are the minimum. So for here are the required deliverables depending on what project type. So for most of our projects, you'll see that there's a final report deliverable and a translational product deliverable. So the only one this doesn't apply to is the translational project type. So you will not need to submit a final report for that. So there's two options for producing a final report deliverable. You can produce a UC ITS report using our template. All UC ITS reports are copy edited internally, and then we also design and lay those out and publish those ourselves. All UC ITS reports are posted to our eScholarship, which is the UC's open repository for all publications. So again, yeah, use the ITS template. Sometimes we get this question about if you are affiliated with the center, you might have your own designed report template and your own copy editor. You may use your center's own report, copy editor, etc. But you must acknowledge the UC ITS funding. There's additional information in that in the grant expectations page. And you must include a technical report documentation page similar to our report. And that just includes all relevant information, all pertinent information up front in an easily accessible one page, so that that information can then be used and shared much easier. So if you have questions about that, please let us know. The other option for you is an open access journal article. So that could be a publicly available on the publisher's website, so not behind a paywall. Or it could be placed in a repository by the author. So as an example, it could be a preprint manuscript posted on eScholarship. We get a lot of questions on those. I'll admit I am not the expert on this, but I point a lot of our PIs to our internal expert, and that's Kendra Levine. So she is available to help you. I also included some resources here for navigating open access. We really encourage and point our researchers to producing open access journal. We found that if you produce a UC ITS report and then try to produce a journal article, sometimes there's some issues with self-plagiarism and other issues. So if you can publish in an open access journal, we are here to support you every step of the way, or too much that we can. So here's some additional resources for you. It's on our current grantees page. There's the link up at the very top. And so what I think would be really helpful to this group might be, there's a link to a list of transportation journals that Kendra Levine manages and upkeeps. So there's always new information she's posting there. And then her contact information is also on our webpage, and then links to some other UC-wide resources on open access journal articles. You can also go to the UC Office of Scholarship and Communications, and they have a lot of really great resources for researchers who want to publish open access. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about the tips for your translational products. This is a new change in our RFP this year. So here's some things I just wanted to emphasize as you're thinking about your translational project, is just to remember the goal of the program. So we want to produce research with impact on California policy and or practice. And we want to make the findings accessible to those who can put your research into action. And so when you're thinking about what translational product I want to really emphasize to be aware of the goal of the program and the goal of your research. You want to, in turn, pick an approach that will reach your audience. So define your audience, who is in a position to use, apply, or benefit from the research, and how do I reach them? So what product or communication vehicle has highest likelihood of reaching or being used by your audience? And lastly, seek support. We have a lot of communication and engagement specialists across the 4 campuses. I'm available as well. We don't expect all of you to be communication and outreach specialists, and so we're here to help, just really, again, for you to be successful. And then what are some options for translational products? Here, these are just examples. It's not a finite list, of course. So there's some written materials like our policy briefs, op-eds, articles, blogs, audio like podcasts, radio, presentations. UC ITS organizes a webinar series. Your campus or center might organize them. Presentations at events, but targeted to that policymaker practitioner audience. That's what's the real critical piece of that. Videos, we've seen a lot of great videos some of you have made and different centers have made, sharing their results, websites, and more. And then I also just included, again, some more examples of specific examples of how I've seen different researchers produce some of these materials and use them. So we do have our, what I'll say, classic UC ITS policy brief. In previous years, this was a requirement. We do have copy editors and policy staff on staff that can help with these. And so I find these as really great summary documents that are targeted to that busy policymaker, where you can put your finding, your top level finding in that heading, and then highlight 3 or 5 things that are really your elevator pitch to that policymaker. These are great leave behind materials. I also highlighted this electric assisted e-bike show promise in getting people out of cars brief, because a policymaker actually took that, copy and pasted that language directly into a bill. And so just to give you a sense of how these policy briefs are actually used. We also have a lot of blogs that you might be aware of. So publishing a blog post could be a translational product. So ITS Davis, they manage their own blog, the climate, transportation and climate blog. And I should say not all of these blogs would be open to all of the researchers, right? So this blog is to highlight expertise at ITS Davis, but again, it's just to give you an idea of some of the resources available. There might be some researchers on the call that are associated or at Berkeley and associated with the Energy Institute. They do a wonderful blog highlighting a lot of the research they're doing and commentary on current policy discussions. We've also had some of our researchers publish in external blogs, be guest commentators. So this was a recent article, or somewhat recent, 2019, so maybe it was a little while ago, with Molly D'Agostino, who I mentioned earlier, in Plan Edison. So for those that engage in urban planning and city design, Plan Edison is a great blog and venue for getting your research out there. There's lots of podcasts. My mistake on this slide, this is actually featuring the Transfers magazine that UCLA ITS manages. So my apologies for that. This is mislabeled. So they do a wonderful Transfers magazine. I don't know if any of you are subscribed to that. You should look it up. It's a fantastic digital magazine that takes newly published research. I believe they're looking for peer-reviewed published articles, and they transform those into articles really targeted to that practitioner audience. Op-eds, several of our researchers have produced op-eds I think are really an effective way of getting that research out there to a broader audience. This was a recent one by Madeline Brozen, at UCLA ITS that was featured in Los Angeles Times. This is an older one, but from Dan Sperling at ITS Davis in the New York Times, and a recent one from Tim Littman at Berkeley in the San Francisco Chronicle. If you're interested in an op-ed, again, we have copy editors and staff writers on hand that can even work with you on developing an op-ed. This is another fun one, podcasts. So we've had a lot of our researchers featured on podcasts. We have some internal opportunities. The UCLA Housing Voice, not maybe a lot of folks on here might be looking at housing specifically, but if you're doing a project on there, I think this is a great podcast. I would recommend you look at it. We also have, like on campus, they have different podcasts. There's Susan Shaheen on our Wonder Mobility. Streets blog is another California-focused transportation podcast. And Freakonomics, this was a recent one where Brian Taylor, the director of ITS Davis, was a guest. on looking at should public transit be free. So these are all opportunities. If you are interested in doing a podcast or being on one and you just don't know how to go about it, we have communication staff and others here to help you navigate that. All right, these are my last couple ones and we'll get to questions, but just another example to throw out here is just presentations and panels. There's lots of great ways to get your research out in front of practitioners. You know, go to their conferences. So I just put a couple up here. We have the Cultivating Our Future. This is the California APA Association of American Planning Association. So they have a conference every year. AEP, they focus on environmental issues. The California Transit Association. So these are all great places where all these individuals are coming in one place and they're always looking for speakers and panelists. I also wanted to highlight just regional opportunities too. There's a couple, I know for the Southern California Association of Governments, they have a regional conference assembly, but they also have a really great like Toolbox Tuesday. I've seen some academics presentations on these Toolbox Tuesdays that are really targeted to city planners and other practitioners across the region. All right, so those are a lot of examples, hopefully to get you thinking about that new translational product requirement. I think I just have a couple more slides here rounding it out on evaluation and scoring. This is taken directly from the RFP, so I'm not saying anything new here. You will notice that there are no of those additional points like we had last year for multi-campus equity and jobs. We did weave in considerations for equity across these three areas. And we did include the student involvement more prominently, as you'll see in the category C. All right, and then successfully submitting your proposal. So here is your checklist. You want to use the proposal template. So we have a lot of directions in there for you just to help, again, help you be successful. We ask that you don't change the headings, but you can remove those directions. We suggest you have 2 copies of the final proposal on hand when you go to submit your proposal. So you want one in the Word version and one as a PDF. That's the PDF is what you will upload when you submit. And if applicable, have your budget in Excel format. So I say if applicable because all of the campuses require you to upload a budget except for UC Berkeley. So if you're UC Berkeley, you will not be uploading your budget as an Excel. Rather, you'll be putting it directly into the template provided for you in the proposal template. Okay, most importantly, those proposals are due by May 31st, by May 31st at 5 p.m. I bolded these 2 items, so you must press submit before 5 p.m. Last year, several people had gone in there, they were entering their information, they did not press submit before 5 p.m., so they were not able to submit their proposal. And you cannot save your progress. We use an online platform called Airtable. One reason we do that is just to keep costs down and make sure that more money goes out to research. So I hope you're in agreement with us. So it's probably a good approach for our program, but you can't save your progress. So just be prepared to submit your proposal in one sitting. So I would at least leave up to, we'll review everything you have to submit, but just maybe give yourself some time and not just 10 minutes to get on there and submit it. And then check for your confirmation email after you submit your proposal, and that will guarantee that it did go through and that we received it. All right, everyone, I think that was my last slide. And if there are any questions, we can answer those now. I am going to stop screen share just so that we can see everyone. All right, I'm gonna check the chat first. Oh, great, we had a lot of, thank you, Whitney and Adonia and Lauren. They dropped a lot of great resources in the chat box, so hopefully you all saw those. So would anybody like to ask a question about the RFP? All right, Claire, there you are. You have the floor.
Hi, Laura. Thank you. I'm with City Lab at UCLA. And I just have a question about the GSR funding for the translational project. You mentioned that their GSR funding is not available. Does that include, is that for salary and tuition? Or sorry, is
Oh.
that tuition and fees or salary as well?
Thank you for asking, Claire. So you can include GSR funding under a translational project.
Okay. Okay.
It's not required. So thanks
Oh, I
for
see.
asking. It's just not required. So apologies. Yeah.
Understood.
So yeah, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the
Okay.
other two, it is required. You must include GSR. The translational is optional.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? If you raise your hand or just even want to jump in, that's easy because sometimes I can't see everybody on the one screen. All right, Ted, yeah, jump in.
Hi, Ted Lamb from the law school at UC Berkeley. I'm curious if so I've got a project right now from the 2023-24 cycle, and I understand the need to have sort of all deliverables completed before new funding could be issued. I'm curious, just two things. One, to what extent is it can there be conversation in the period between May 31 and the termination of the current grant 2 months later to just sort of confirm that everything's on track, which it will be, obviously, but is that a process that you guys would want to be engaged in at all? And two, to what extent is the 2024-25 RFP open to build on work that was done under prior rounds? Expand on, in response to the topics that are listed, but very much sort of encompassing work that was begun under last year's work.
Great, thank you, Ted. And Laura Melendi might have some answers to these too. So your first question, you received an award last cycle, was that right? Or was it?
The last cycle, yeah, currently
Okay.
yeah.
So if you have a grant from last cycle, this probably won't apply to you per se. You probably don't have past due deliverables because it's not, you're still within the open time of your project.
Yeah,
so
it's
this is
still
only if
open.
past,
We'll conclude at the beginning of the next one. So, does there need to be a conversation just like to confirm that those are complete before decisions are made?
So the only stipulation there is that before the next round of funding would be released to you, you would have turned in all of your deliverables from the prior award.
Okay.
And that's for anyone else on this call. If you received an award last year, you are eligible to apply, most likely, unless your project was like a 6-month project and you're already past your deadline. So, but just to safe measure, you can always check and ask through that form.
Great.
And then your second question was, Ted, are we looking for projects that build on previous work? Is that was your second
projects that build
question?
on the work that was funded by the prior ITS round. So very much in response to the new prompts and sort of dealing with the new topics, but is definitely building on work that was initiated under the prior round of ITS funding. Is that okay?
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. Our focus is on the priorities listed in our RFP. However, I believe that in the RFP we stipulate that if you have a concept that has really strong support from a public agency, community-based organization, or partner, we do accept ideas outside of those that are specifically listed.
Got it.
So, and I don't know your specific topic, so I can't tell if it's in the 12 or not. But if your project was, if you're working really closely with an agency, CBO, and they want you to continue that work, then I think you're well positioned. And I think you could also reach out to Laura Melendi, and she'd be happy to even provide additional feedback on your specific idea.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Everybody knows their project. They're all excited. They have their partner. Lauren, did you want to, you dropped a question in the chat box.
Yeah, I was just responding more to Ted's question. So yeah, there is a question in the application form, basically asking you for that exact scenario. So are you receiving other funding, maybe not even from UC ITS to support similar work, or in your case, sounds like funding for a phase 1 and you want to do some kind of relevant phase 2. That's fine. It'll ask you, if you select yes, it'll ask you for more detail.
Got it. Okay, so in the application form, it just has that as as sort of a box, but you're saying in the form, there's an actual sort of responsive prompt.
There should be. Yes, it says, if yes, please explain. Is that
Yeah,
correct,
okay.
John, that's set up?
Okay, cool. So it would be a relevant place to explain sort of what ITS funded last year, how this would be building on it using an additional year's worth of work, et cetera.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, we did get a question in the chat box. I can read that out loud if you'd like. Keontae. I got a thumbs up last time, and now I'm self-conscious
Yeah.
of saying it. Oh, do you want to say it
Yeah.
out loud? Oh, great. Yeah, please come off mute.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, when I read the RFP, because there it says about maybe research topic does not belong to the one of the research priority on the list, and then PI should
I
be
see.
proposal must demonstrate about the strong evidence about some supporting of the research. So, is there any kind of form or documentation that I need to prepare for the proposal, maybe for those kind of research topics that are not covered by the RFP priority list?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So what I would share in response is to read through the whole RFP and looking at those questions that do talk about like policy impact, the project stakeholder engagement, the letter of statement. So we tried to describe what would be a strong response in those areas. So what's a strong statement of support? So you really want to make sure you're hitting the marks on all those elements that talk about that stakeholder engagement and stakeholder support.
So does that mean that do I need to prepare for some of the letters of support from some community organizations for the proposal, or as a kind of attachment to the proposal?
Yeah, so sorry, so it's a statement of support. That is the requirement of the RFP. So that should be from a public agency, or it can be from a community-based organization or partner. Or you can include as many statements of support as you want, but we do just require one. There's this one to meet the requirements of the proposal. Yeah, and if you'd like some help with that, you can reach out through that form, and either myself or another individual across the ITS would be willing to talk with you and work with you and think about who could be a good fit for your idea.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just to say, there is no special other form that you need to do, just to emphasize that. Yeah.
There's great guidance in the proposal template itself under the statement of support section, outlining what Laura just said, what makes a great statement of support. And to reiterate, Laura, this should be coming from the stakeholder themselves, whether as a formal letter or an email correspondence outlining their support and involvement.
Okay.
Great. Is there any other questions? Would any of my colleagues at the campuses like to share anything specifically? Laura, Melendi, Craig, Rint, Lauren Yacobucci, I see Whitney also here. I don't know if Juan joined us. All right. Craig says we covered it. Well, we are an efficient group. So again, I recorded this meeting. It will be posted, or this webinar, it will be posted on our website. I just want to thank you all for your interest in our program. We're really excited to see what all of you put together, and hopefully working with all of you and supporting you and putting together really great proposals. So with that, we'll conclude today's webinar, and hopefully I'll get to hear from you in the near future. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.